Man to man, combat hand to hand, hands locked, ready for the last stand, elbow drops, kicks fade bang. If I can hate you, levitate, better settle mate, lights out, knocked out by the heavyweight.
Hey, it's Toby from Heavyweight MMA. Lucky today to finally catch the man, Smokin Shane Young. It's fresh out of Aotearoa. Kia ora, my friend. How are you?
Kia ora, brother. Toby. Happy to be here, bro. I've been dodging you for about feels like 18 months.
Yeah, man.
My baby came out, I think.
That's it. You're a difficult man to catch, but you're finally here, man. So thank you very much, man. Just to engage the viewers and get people interested in this interview, I want you to kick off by imagining that you're about to fight me and you'll face off with me, and you're about to give me some of that fresh te reo in the face, challenging me, bro. Let's go.
Right. Ko te reo te Maori o te mana Maori, ti hei Maori ora.
Yeah, that's the shit, bro. That's the shit. I've been watching a video of footage over the last few days, bro, and it's really interesting to see. And that's one of the main reasons I wanted to catch up with you, is to talk about your fighting, of course, your history, and also your connection with the Maori culture, being of European and Maori descent, man.
Yeah, I'm actually Scottish and Maori. My Scottish friends would appreciate that. You know, William Wallace, freedom, kilts. So on both sides, I've actually got warrior people, which is pretty awesome. Like in terms of my story, I've got a pretty weird story because my Maori culture, I grew up around, like, I'm the only white kid in my family, and so is my son now. So all of my cousins, aunties, and uncles, they're all like quite dark skin, brown skin, like very easily identifiable as Maori. So I grew up as like the odd kid out where I'm from, Maraenui, Napier. I had a lot of people tell me at school, "You're not Maori, you're not Maori." Point out to my cousin, I was like, "That's my brother." They were like, "Nah, bull stuff." Can we swear on this?
Yeah, whatever you want, man.
Oh yeah, you know. And so I kind of had like identity crisis growing up. So that was in Napier, and then I moved to Auckland. And when I moved to Auckland, I almost did a 180, and I decided to be really white. I decided that I wasn't Maori because I believed in a lot of the statistics here in New Zealand, that the Maori and Pacific Islanders have higher crime rates, higher domestic violence rates, all lies really, because the truth is that it's most things in life, it's just the equal among all races, but it's what media and other outlets choose to highlight. So for about a decade, I was fully, in my eyes anyway, in my mind, I was anti-Maori. And it was only in about 2015 onwards, when I started becoming a man, 23, 24, that I realized what I've been doing, that I turned my back on my culture, turn my back on my family. And my family wouldn't say that. They'd be like, "No, nothing's changed." But it was inside me. I knew that I was trying not to be Maori because I wanted to get ahead in life. You know, I wanted to be. I went to a good school. I got a scholarship to a school called Dilworth School, which is there's a bee trying to attack me. It's a full scholarship school. So I was afforded a great education for 7 years. And I guess, I made a lot of mistakes internally, but in the last 5 to 6 years, I've leaned back into my culture. And that's why, a big part of the reason why I represent so hard, because I was on the other side of people believing that, Maori are part of, Maori and Pacific Islanders are why crime rates are so high in certain areas and so I can see both sides of the coin. And I just know that people that believe or think that of Maori and Pacific Islanders, that they just don't understand, and when you don't understand something, you're scared of it. So I just want to educate people more around the beautiful side of Maori culture, which is every aspect of the culture really is beautiful in my eyes.
So
just on another note, it's not really just about Maori culture, it's indigenous cultures like Yugoslavian. I got a good Yugoslavian friend, Croatian, Serbian, Romanian, Aboriginal, and obviously Polynesian cultures. There's so many things that tie into the same as Maori culture, and it's not, I don't discriminate to being just Maori culture, and Scottish too. Just people of the land that try understand that we are shepherds of the land, that we're not owners of the land. We are just here to take care of it.
Yeah, man. Can you explain a little bit about, I know the positive things about the Maori community for people like myself that don't really know, man. I know it's a strong community, and you mentioned about returning to your roots. What sort of good feelings and what are the good side of the Maori culture, man?
Well, we're very family orientated, and we're also very land orientated. We try to approach things with the foresight of, say if you're going to start a business, it's sort of ingrained in us as a people, as a culture, to think what are the side effects going to be in the long term for the land and the earth that we live on, the place that we're in, as well as how's it going to affect the people that are involved in that business. And that's a very real application of Maori culture in today's world. As like, say, business, I know a few Maori businessmen that meet every month. They meet at the top of this maunga, this mountain, and they say a karakia, which is a prayer for their businesses, for the people involved in their business. And there's a real spiritual connection which is based around the land. It's almost like paganish, if you get what pagans, how they believe in sort of gods like that. And other good aspects of Maori culture are one thing is like carving and tattoo. So you see people with the tāmoko, their whole face is being tattooed here or over here, or like Bam Tai Tui Vasa, how he's got the peta on his leg that comes all the way up to here. That's we have a version of that called the puhoro. And so the story goes, a puhoro is like when we have canoes. So our people were very good sea navigators. So we navigated from this place called Heavywgt, which is probably Tahiti, after overpopulation. And we came across this massive span of ocean called the Pacific Ocean, Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. We navigated that with these canoes. They're called I don't know what they're called, catamarans. We invented those like a couple thousand years ago. Same with Asiatic peoples. They're kind of boats that can traverse great oceans, massive waves. But yeah, the story goes that we used to carve the bottom of the boats. You'd carve like little fishes in it, and it would make the boats faster. And that's a true, that there's the boat builders here in Auckland. Auckland's got some of the best boat builders in the world. They do that. They take some of our old knowledge and they just reapply it with new materials, carbon fiber, aluminium foils and stuff like that. And yeah, so the story goes is we do that same thing to ourselves. So on our legs, we etch into our skin the canals, the fissures, like we do on the waka, and it makes us faster. So it's really, there's so many things that are integrated into our culture. So many things in our culture that are integrated into us as a people. Say like the chopping of our skin, because how we used to do tāmoko is they'd actually they'd cut lines into your face and then put the ink in it. Not like, it's sort of like, so what happens with normal tattoo now is that the needle stabs in it and it puts ink in you, but we used to cut it with like a knife basically. So it was like carving, like with a hammer and a calf, whatever you call that thing. Yeah, that's one main aspect of it is tattoo tāmoko. Yeah.
And man, you mentioned about the connection to the land and kind of like how things have been lost a bit in modern day, right? Like the young kids, etc., not really connected with the land. What do you mean by that?
Well, here's one example. Here in New Zealand, we've got the highest youth suicide rates, right, per capita. And back in the day, before pre-colonization time, there was a time we called it Riddell or Fiddle, where the moon, because we believe that we're people of the moon because we're 80% water, so that the moon actually has more of a influence on us than the sun. Right now, we live in a what is it called, the Judean calendar made by Julius Caesar. We go by that calendar. But Maori, we do a thing called Maramataka, which is the calendar led by the moon, the lunar phases. And yeah, so with the youth suicide rates, there's correlations to that time of Riddell, where a lot of young men are taking their own lives. But we knew back in the day that had something to do with the moon. So during the lunar phase of Riddell, men, say like me, I'd take every kid age from 8 to 19, they'd come with me on a hunting trip. And that correlates with, age of like puberty and stuff, because, there's hormones inside us. So it's not just blase, like, oh, spiritual science. It's real science. We know that kids get hormonal between those ages, and you're prone to lash out emotionally. And that's what kids do. They just lash out emotionally, but they lash out at themselves, especially during this time of Riddell. There's correlations to it. There's professors, Maori professors now that I speak to, that say there are correlations to Maori kids here in New Zealand, harming themselves, if, not taking their own lives, but self-harm happening a lot during that time of Riddell, which is a type of lunar phase. I don't really understand that, but I know the statistics. I speak on the statistics.
Yeah, man, it's a terrible thing. And from the suicide rate, I mean, and another, that kind of rings true to me a little bit. Back home in Australia, in the area I'm from, close to Terrigal, has a very high suicide rate too. And it's this beautiful part of the world, like beautiful coastline, amazing sort of place to be. But for some reason, people just, these young kids getting depressed and killing themselves at times is not a good thing, man. Would you say that kids in New Zealand, or especially looking at the Indigenous tribes, etc., do they would benefit from reconnecting with the Maori sort of heritage because of the sense of community, right?
Yeah. On my own personal belief is that it has a lot to do with intergenerational trauma. There's a thing called epigenetics, where they believe that trauma can be passed down through your DNA. Through, say, like, I'm no scientist. I just beat people up for a living, but I feel that because it's like our kids, it's like they're trying to tell us something, and that's why it's kids. Like if it was old people doing it, I probably would get up off my seat for a blah. Old mates had a good 60 years, but there's like 15-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds doing it, and I think it's because they're born with something, this take, this deep trauma and hurt inside them, and they don't know why. Because I felt that myself too. Like, I just don't know why. You just get sad. Oh, I still got kumara on my shoulder for my son. But that's a bit woo-woo. I understand how people couldn't get with that. But when you speak to a Maori or Indigenous person, Aboriginal person, they get what I'm saying. And you could attribute it to, say, World War II. A lot of our young men went off to war. They saw a lot of messed up stuff, saw their best mates die, and they came back with, PTSD. And PTSD can get passed down because you look at your granddad and he's just like, gets into these rages when he's drunk and stuff like that, and you don't know why, and then you attribute that behavior to what's normal, and so you do it. So that's like a more face level looking at how intergenerational trauma can be passed down. And so I think how we could benefit from going back to our community, back to our culture, is that we already had inbuilt things. We knew about this stuff because we're a warrior culture. When a man, when some of our men would go off to war and come back, there'd be a reintegration process. You can't go from having to defend yourself and your people by, cutting off heads or cracking skulls and, disabling a lot of people and then collecting them into a prison camp and then making them submit and then come back to now raising babies. It doesn't compute, it can't happen like that. You'll be going from there to like raising these babies to be like, smash baby. Yeah, I don't know, but there were things already integrated into our culture that we knew of that, and on a different level, we're not going to war and coming out, but we're being shown a lot of messed up stuff, online. So kids are being able to see that, oh wow, like in Christchurch, this guy killed 70 odd people, and those were our people, and people will just have to deal with it. And we think on a face level, like, oh, it's just a video. But some kids, like I was when I was a kid, when I'd see things online, I'd actually think about it, and I'd have empathy for those people, and I'd feel like those people. I'd be like, man, imagine if, I'd like use my imagination, and I don't know why, but I just would. I get real sad for others. And I believe a lot of kids are the same. Most kids are born wanting to give, wanting to contribute to others. So when they see all this nasty stuff happening around the world, of course they're going to feel a little bit like, oh, humans don't deserve to be on this earth. Look at all this bad stuff. But I didn't really answer your question there, but I think,
man, I agree with that epigenetic stuff, man. I see things like this through my kids that 100% they just come out with traits that you have without teaching them anything. They just have those traits that are already inbuilt in them. And I think that's probably part of it. And another thing I think is that there's just so much shit going on everywhere and so much, information coming to kids. They don't really have a purpose anymore, And I think that's where having reconnecting with the roots is going to give a good base and foundation for living. And then where that flows into as well is something like fighting, right? Because that gives people like a feeling of purpose. It can almost be like a solid base to their life, that they have a purpose to go somewhere, to connect with their friends, to learn something, to get better. I think things like that can also help these kids, right?
Yep. You nailed it right on the head, bro. The self-improvement, the having a deep sense of purpose every day as well. Or, both you're improving yourself every day. You're finding your purpose every day. And it's the community. Like, there's a lot of good people in martial arts. I'm not going to say every single person in martial arts is good, because there's still this currently thing we're going through where like a lot of say media outlets, not yourself, I just mean media outlets are like, they either make it all like a bit of a joke, like the warfare that we go out there, or they over violence it. I don't know how to say, but they focus on it being violence against another human, which is like, in Australia you've got a lot of people doing stabbings and street fighting and stuff like that, whereas that's forgetting the discipline and the bushido, the way of martial arts. It's a form of self-discipline, and if you can discipline your mind and your body, then it's like radiates outside you. People admire that. They go, man, that's what I want to be. I want to be like a warrior in a garden, not a gardener in a war.
You don't want to be a gardener in a war, right? No, that's true, man. And talking about like that, that mateship and friendship and community that you get in the gym. Obviously, you're well known for being at CKB. CKB is a big gym now. I hear Dan Hooker talking about like the massive community. He was actually referring to it about if the gym was to move away during those COVID times, that it wouldn't really necessarily work with just a handful of fighters and trainers going away, because it is such a big community. It's not even just the people in the gym, it's the people that support the people in the gym. So you probably got like a couple of thousand people that were associated with CKB, right? That make it into what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a couple thousand, to be honest. Like it's there's not that, like, I think people have this image of CKB being this massive, like the space is pretty big, but it's more a couple hundred, like a few hundred, under say 500 people. That we could fit more, but like, yeah, there's not that many people. And I think it's because people think we're like some big celebrity gym, which is all good. Hey, I'm all good with only having 80 people on the mat, because that's chocker rather than like 150, like some of the big gyms in Australia. But yeah, I would say it's about 500. And in my circle, our circle, like the pro team circle and stuff, is maybe like 150. And but they're all, the mid-tier fighters, which are just the quality of those guys is, some of them, the majority of them are UFC quality. It's just that maybe, like honing a blade, some of them just need 4 more years of just fight camps after fight camps to have that fitness and that durability, that like, just like even their bone structure, it gets stronger and stronger after years of hitting pads, kicking the bag. You just need that. Skill wise though, a lot of them are already there. Even fitness wise, a lot of them are already there. But then there's these like subsidiary people that are just, I'm going to shout out Nate Dogg, hopefully she's watching this. She's like a little blonde, long hair, blonde, blue-eyed lady that's had a couple fights, beautiful lady, and she just comes out and supports us in so many different ways, like with helping train aid our mate Geordie, fight dietitian, lots of little things that you don't really think about, but if they were to just pull themselves away, you'd feel it. You'd be like, oh man, we're like a 18-wheeler. You think, oh, well, if you lose one wheel, you'll be sweet. Lose one wheel on an 18-wheeler, you're going to feel that bump. That ride's going to be bumpy.
Yeah, man. Hey, I actually had a chance to come down to the gym a couple of years ago. I think it was 2019. I was back then. Had a small connection with Dan Hooker. Now he's too famous to answer messages, but back then he actually did. So I came down and watched him train, and came in and watched the class. So had a pretty good feeling about it, man. Like it was a big sparring class that I looked at, and yeah, it was a really good energy and really high skill level, man. And I think it's definitely a good gym, and definitely, you can see the results coming out now,
Yeah, thank you, bro. Thank you. That's and I believe that is because of our lineage. We have Eugene and Doug Viney, the main two coaches. We also have Mike Ango, Twister, Moni, heaps of other. Andre, obviously, our wrestling coach. Then a few of us have come from other gyms, so we're like a true melting pot of cultures, a melting pot of gyms. That's what we are. But that stems from Balmoral Liga, Lolo Hemuli, which stems from City Liga, Sifu, Sikung, Grandmaster Philip Lam. I was just watching Ip Man 4 last night, and I was like, bro, Philip Lam is our Ip Man. Like, he really is. He brought kickboxing to New Zealand in the 1970s, and he still gets up when he has his shows. He gets up and does like the Tai Chi, like does like 1,000 punches and like 1 minute type stuff. Like, they used to call him, I believe, Shadow Fist. I'm sort of not really giving it the full respect that it deserves right now, to be honest. I didn't actually want to bring it up thinking about it, because I was like, man, I need to do more research into our Grandmaster Sifu. But he, that's traditional Chinese Kung Fu, and that's been passed down to us, and we've just tweaked it. That's like the real Maori way, the Polynesian way. You get something and you just tweak it to your own, you give it your own style, you give it your own flair. And that's what we've done at City Kickboxing.
And it's a really interesting story. I talk a bit to Lolo Hemuli, and because I was going to talk to him, I started looking into it a bit. And yeah, it's amazing that someone, a Chinese guy comes to New Zealand, teaches Kung Fu, teaches Thai boxing. Like, it's strange that he would, like, he'd seen it a bit and he brought it over and then brought people over to teach it. And from there just grew this, this great gym. And then that's still living today through you guys. It's a great story, man. And then you guys have all got a connection with China as well. Like yourself, you fought Chinese guys, you fought in China, Israel Adesanya, Blood Diamond, Brad Riddell, all over in China fighting, probably largely due to the connection of Sifu or Sikung Philip Lam, right?
Yep, 100%. My first time I fought in China was for Legend of Ime, and that was with Doug Viney. And that was I fought, I'd had a couple fights in Australia, won my XFC title, defended it, and then that was my first big Chinese trip, and it was awesome. I'm so happy for those memories, to have that connection with China. And yeah, all of us City Kickboxing boys had a few stints in China, had a couple stints. My last fight before the UFC was against a China versus New Zealand card on Sifu Sikung Philip Lam's card. And
you fought Wang Guan in that fight, was it?
No. Oh, no. That was my last loss before the UFC. Yeah, Wang Guan. I still want to get that one back, the old Dongbei Tiger. I don't know what he's up to these days.
A friend of mine from here actually fought that guy as well, and got bashed to shit, but he still fought him.
Yeah, I just basically sort of ran away for the whole 5 minutes. He's got a 90% knockout rate or something. But yeah, we got our coach Mike Ango, going back to China, who you interviewed already, I believe.
Yeah, I did. He's going to UFC in Shanghai, correct?
Yeah, it's gone full circle. It's a student of Philip Lamb's is now going back to China to teach them our sport. It's all ours. It's all ours. It's it's the circle of life.
It's a funny thing, man. Yeah, so you
fought us all.
and you fought everywhere, bro. You fought in Las Vegas, Abu Dhabi, Melbourne, Singapore, Sydney, and Australia, New Zealand. Quite a few fights there, right? What sort of sticks out in your mind through that experience? What sort of places or feelings?
The diversity of cultures, but also the same connections and patterns of cultures. That's what I don't know. It must be something ingrained in me that I look for patterns, and a lot of them are to do with like, or not socioeconomic. No, that's not it. But more like the culture of things, like how, say in China, when you go to share someone as a form of respect, you bring your cup lower than theirs. Like just little things like that, like they're scattered throughout every different culture, but it's all about respect. And a lot of it, I feel like, goes back to like Buddhism and stuff. Like, you know, that they've thought that there's, when I bow to you, it's not actually to you, the person, the face of you, it's to the little Buddha inside you. My little Buddha inside me bows to the little Buddha inside you. And I feel like that's the string of connection through all the cultures, is knowing that there's a true soul, or a true, like the most awesome version of that person. And you can, when you see a glimpse of it, you respect that part of them. Like you can see even, you know, like serial killers. I don't know, that's a bad example, but some people feel bad for like Ted Bundy, you know, and really why they feel bad for Ted Bundy is because of like, they know that a kid, you know, gets muddled up and they make all these excuses, but we all know that there's something deep inside all of us, and that's what I like to see it from all these different cultures. And my favorite was probably Singapore, just because it was the first time I spoke to Riddell in front of the UFC cameras, and that was a really special moment. That was a peak moment of my life personally. And the crazy thing about it is I wasn't even going through a great time. Like that was when I was sort of in my depression. Like I came home to like not like a lot of good stuff, but it was like, it's just that's the story of life, is like you have these goods, and you know that time soon shall pass, and then you have these bads, and that time will pass too. So it's just, I'm learning how to not go up and down so much, but just slowly ride the wave. And I'm just thankful for martial arts for teaching me all that.
That's it, man. And talking about speaking to Reo, and it kind of brings up that connection that I want to talk about. And like you've mentioned that your ancestors are warriors, fighting to the death in battle, you know, and that's something you're connecting to, and you'll say Maori words, and you know, it gives you power. Can you talk a bit how like your kind of culture connects with the fighting? Because it kind of does, right?
Yeah, so there was a quote I said at the start of this. I said, "Ko te reo te Maori o te mana Maori." The language is the essence of my culture, Maori culture. And in truth, that's the essence of all cultures, because like, I'm not like a biblical guy, but I've seen like a few little funny on the last thing I just posted on Instagram, 95 people from India posted the scripture, this random scripture. It must be some like hack bot or something, but it was just out of it, because like talking about like how the language or the word was our first, like, it's like our first gift from God, is what they say, or something. Like it's your ability to conjure things up is from word, you know, and that's what our culture is basically saying, is like the essence of everything. Our whole culture is based around our word and our ability to speak. And most things in the world get done with conversations. Most things are an exchange of breath, conversation. And our culture, like I believe, I have my own beliefs, but I think it's a similar belief to a lot of indigenous cultures, that to carry on your culture is to keep the language alive. If you can keep the language alive, keep it speaking, then you'll keep the culture alive. And there's a big revitalization happening in New Zealand with Te Reo Māori. And like even karakia, which is prayer, that's massive. That's a big thing. And it's in heaps of other cultures, it's you know, they go into trance-like states because they just repeat the same thing over and over. And other cultures in say the Middle East, I know that they all these what are they called, the Lost Boys of Sudan, or yeah, was it Lost Boys of Sudan? How they remembered their whole culture was like a 2-hour long song, and they, you know, help with their memory and stuff. But hidden in that song is like messages from your grandparents or from your great-great-grandparents. It's something that was spoken 400, 300 years ago that you can, you know, you just have to say it. It's the only thing that can be transferred over the span of any time if you just say it word for word, dialect for dialect. click for clack, and then if you add in some little signals in there, then you're doing exactly what your ancestor did, because it's not like they had 7 arms 400 years ago. They still had 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, 1 tongue, 1 mouth, 2 ears. Like it's pretty like not even crazy. It's so matter of fact when you think of it that way, that oral based things are the only thing that can be transferred person to person to person to person generationally. Like I could, carve a stone, and yet that might get passed down, but eventually some little kid is going to hold on to that and they're going to lose it. They're not going to have the respect that it deserves. But if you just sort of beat it into them, not beat it, but like make them memorize something, then it's like ingrained in them without even knowing. Like a tune, you hear a tune, like when I sang before, it's the circle of life. Everyone knows that's from Lion King. Everyone knows that's from Lion King. And even if you don't know the words, you might know the tune. Like, yeah, it's a special thing to be able to speak and sing and dance and so good.
You're a talented man, bro. Hey, and on what you're talking about, like things that passing through generationally from talking and that, and that thing that resonated with me, you were talking about, Maori magic, goosebumps, etc. That's what it does for me when I hear you talking, even like quoting you, man. You said, let me be, before fighting, you said your ancestors said, let me be present, let my soul be with the sky father, Ranganui, and the earth mother, Papa Tui Neku. So I'm part of everything and put me in a flow state. That sort of thing. It just sounds magical, man. And it's amazing. Does that give you a strong feeling to be part of that culture and then to incorporate it into a fight, man?
Yeah, it really does. And even more so because of my story, how I said I was so anti-Maori for 10 years. And maybe, like there's a greater story being written here. Like in my mind, I wish I could go back and just be connected to my Maori culture the whole time. But, there's a greater story being written here. And maybe because of that time, that's why I am so diving deep headfirst into it. And even on my Scottish side, I'm like leaning towards that side now that I'm reconnecting with my father. Like William Wallace, freedom, being put on the stretcher. Like there's magic there too. Like not for my brown skinned peoples, but also for my pale face whānau as well. I just like, yeah, there's real magic in the world, and it's not buried that deep. It's not really buried that deep. It just takes a few conversations here with the right people, and then you just go forward with that belief to unlock it. And karakia, so that prayer, like just saying words but in a pattern, saying certain words in a pattern, they unlock things. And like I know with my fighting that I've because of what's been happening in my life, like just life, it kind of gets in the way of things. I've moved away from stuff that I did before, that when I first got into the UFC, that I really leaned into, and I've moved away from them just because of life letting it get in the way. But that's part of my challenge is to go back to that, to go back to karakia, to go back to really doing the work. Not just being Maori isn't just about being Maori, it's also about reading, it's about practicing those karakia, it's about learning maurako and doing these things that are anyone can do them too. Anyone can do them. Kapahaka isn't just for Maori. They do kapahaka in London. They do there's actually an established whare. Man, I can't remember what they're called, but there's a place where they do kapahaka there. And there's a reason why when people see kapahaka or a haka that they get goosebumps. My belief, and I don't care how crazy this sounds, my belief is that Maori culture, because we were the last to be colonized, we were one of the last cultures to be colonized, that there's a magic in indigenous cultures, and it's embedded in the soil here in Aotearoa, because we lived that only 300 years ago. Our people were going every day believing in this karakia, believing that we're gonna all this magic. And meanwhile the rest of the world was industrialized or beginning an industrialized revolution, all that stuff, but we were just here being Maori, which means normal in direct translation. And because we're the last to be colonized, I believe there's still like a residue of that magic. And thankfully, with even COVID, you know, it slowed the world right down. Thankfully, we haven't gone past the tipping point. And I believe New Zealand, the Pacific area, Australia included the South Pacific area, is like the last stronghold of this old indigenous magic. And now it's pushing back, slowly pushing back. Bam Bam, Tai Tuivasa, myself, Israel being African, you know, we're pushing back slowly with the world's fastest growing sport. And it was made the year I was born, 1993. There's just like, yeah, that's my belief, is that in 50 years, when people say, oh, you know how people are, you know how the world is, it will be as in like yeah, you know how the world is, like people give and we're sharing and we have foresight and we're taking care of the land. You know, it'll be a total flip of what it is now, because when people say, oh, you know how people are, you know how the world is, like we think it's going to shit, but I don't believe that. I don't believe it at all.
Good, man. Positive way of thinking. Hey, one thing you said, you were kind of joking, but you said you need to wear a bulletproof vest. Some people say you need to wear a bulletproof vest to walk through Maori Nui, where you're from. I wanted to know, like, what was it like growing up there, and did that sort of environment? Did you start thinking about doing fighting, etc. then, or is that something that led to it, or when did you start fighting?
No, I did not at all. Up until about age 11, between 11 and 13. Before that, I was like, I admitted, I was like, okay, I'm a little bitch. It's just it is what it is. That's what I said. I was just like, okay, all my cousins are tough and I'm just the weakest link. All good. Like I was just admitted to it because I was the one that would run away crying, always go tell uncle, like almost embarrass the family, you know, like, oh man, all he did was take your ball. But no, I'd always run away, just be scared. And yeah, it was like, it probably saved me from a lot of getting my ass kicked, like being, you know, being fearful of other kids around the neighborhood. But like my perspective as a young person, as a young kid, I didn't see a lot of the harm that was going on. Thankfully, I was like shielded because my family, in Maori Nui, there's a few gangs. Well, there's one main gang. There's no point mentioning them. It's, you know, gangs are just like a gym in my eyes. They're just like a gym of young men that want to be in a community, but they're the unloved ones. They're the outcasts, and they shackled themselves together. And for good or bad, they just, you know, formed a unit, and they call it a gang, and they put patches on their back. It is what it is. But when I was a young person, like the influence very obvious, but it didn't seem that harmful to me. It's more as I'm an older person now that I see the crazy stuff that I used to get up to as a kid. Like, I'm like, man, I'm so lucky I didn't become like a deep drug addict or a deep gang member, or like, it was probably because of my skin color and my cousins and my uncles. Like my uncles, like basically fought to not be influenced by the gangs in Maori Nui. Like they literally fought. And then they got a reputation of like, oh, fuck, don't mess with the youngs. Like all respectful, you know, like they're men now, and they just have respect in the place, and we all have respect for each other. But yeah, when I hear other white people, when I tell them, you know, I'm from Maori Nui, it might be because of the color of my skin that they feel they can say jokes like that. And instead of getting angry now like I used to, like I went off at a couple. One was like a white lady, and I went off at her, and then I was like, why am I getting angry at this lady? And I had to apologize after. I was like, sorry, just when you said, you know, bulletproof vest, you were talking about, I was like, you know, those are my cousins, that's my family. What, you scared to walk through there? You don't even know, there's heaps of beautiful people there. And she was like, looked like she was really scared. And I was like, whoa, actually now I'm going to add to her story of people from Maori Nui don't like hang out with them, they're scary people. So that was like an eye-opening moment for me at this cafe on Marine Parade. I feel like what happens when you're from a place where people say it's like that, you don't see the good, because you're like, no, I need a bulletproof vest to walk through here, when really it's like a lovely community. There's this there's this thing called the koha shed, which is a giant container where people can bring items, and they just like, it's like a place we sort of like a give a book, receive a book type thing. There's heaps of all these awesome initiatives in there, and I think it's a beautiful place, and it's just the misconception and it's like Scarface says, you know, it's like easy to be like, oh, that's the bad guy. You put them as the low so that you can justify your bad things. You say, oh, as long as I'm not as bad as Marae Nui, then it's all good. But keep thinking that, because Marae Nui, where it's situated geographically, so close to the beach and stuff, I'm gonna make that place a beautiful like hub for business, and it's just gonna be all us, all our old people live there. Turn it to some real nice buildings made of hemp, just made of some material that's not steel. It's definitely was hard in the 80s. I gotta go back and have respect for my mum and my uncles, because when they grew up there, it was a lot harder. Like it was, I don't know if you've seen that movie Once We're Warriors.
Of course.
Yeah, that Marae Nui was like, it's like they just took a snapshot of Marae Nui and they put it in a movie in the 80s, the late 70s and the 80s. And that was what they call social gentrification. That's what happened. Like my grandmother told me a story, and I heard her and I was like, man, they gentrified this place. Because before she moved, they've lived there since the 70s. I won't say what color house, but yeah, they've lived in the same place for, what's that, 50 years. And I remember asking her, why didn't you move them out? And she's like, oh, there was actually this thing. It was like a government thing. And because I used to play netball with all these Pākehā, these European ladies, they asked me, they said, oh, are you going to get that government grant? You know, it was a grant for people in Marae Nui. And they were offering, back then it was only $2,000 was all you needed to get a deposit on the house. And they offered that to like heaps of different people, but never to our family. So the story goes. And the only reason my nan found out about it is because she played netball with these ladies, and they asked her like, "Oh, are you gonna do that? Are you gonna take that grant and move to this other place? Not Tamatea, Taradale, maybe another place in Napier." And they so a lot of European and other large families, or so, you know, young families, they moved out. And then what they replaced their houses with were state houses. They're called state houses here. I don't know what the Australian name for it is. Like they're, you know, houses that only, you know, people...
commission homes or something. They call it commission homes in Sydney anyway.
Yeah. Commission homes, yep. So there are heaps of them. And they're still similar to that, you know. So they'll only have a person there for like 18 months and they'll just come through and fucking destroy the house because they're semi like recovering drug addicts, or they've just gotten out of prison, and they get a lot of these houses. And that was like 50% of the homes in Marae Nui became that. And that happened in the early 80s. So my mum saw that from being like, yeah, it was like this cool community. And the infrastructure's still there, the skate park, the dairies, the basketball court, all in the center. They tried to make that a mall, but now it's like what you see, I guess, I don't know what you call them, like just, you know, they're just government houses type stuff, like, and that happened in the 80s, you know, and the reverberations of that have been like long lasting. But now it's almost like they're trying to do the opposite. They're trying to ungentrify it. They want to buy, like, the houses prices in Marae Nui are now going up, and that's the easiest way to make people of low socioeconomic standing not be able to afford the houses there. So they buy it off them for, say, 800,000, which is like $100,000 over the market value, and then they're selling it now for like 1.1 because they just spruce it up, and there's heaps of them happening now. And I'm like, just need to win 20 million within the 5 years, and I'll just come through and be a property developer and just make it all like, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a full plan just yet, but it's definitely a lot of money.
Yeah, man.
As part of it.
We haven't really touched on like where you're at now, man. Like, where are you at with your fighting? There's not a lot of stuff, like you said. You haven't been online. You haven't been doing interviews. You had one fight in 2021. What's your plan? Where you at with training and everything, man?
Yeah, still training good. You know, training at City Kickboxing. Just letting life sort of get in the way is what has been happening the last couple of years since 2019. letting excuses creep in instead of solving problems. But I'm in a really good space now, like physically, as like the house that I'm living in, and I'll be here. You know, this is the home that we own. Like it's provided like a wholesome, stable, probably the most stable environment I've had for like since I was at high school, when I was at boarding school. You know, like it's just so wholesome and good with my son here. Yeah, so I'm just excited to get in there next year. Obviously, it won't be on the card in February. Yeah, like fighting is it means more to me than a career. And for that to keep pushing forward, propelling forward, I do need to get a few other ducks in a row. Like I thought I could just go into a fight camp without having these other things in a row outside of the gym. And that showed in my last couple of performances that, nah, you need to like, it's everything for me. It's not just training. It's not just, you know, you can train twice a day, eat right. But if your mind's not right, then it kind of spoils the whole pudding. And I feel like my mind's right, and it's just right every day. It gets more and more aligned, and I feel like I'm living the more authentic life that I want to live. And I'm only 28, so I'm not in a super rush. I see myself being the bantamweight world champion at age 33 and retaining that title for 3 years, and then handing it off to my Asian friend Lawrence Louis. And that's the plan that I have. So that's a 5-year plan for me. And I've never, ever had a 5-year plan. When I was at high school, I just had a plan to make the UFC. And then when I made the UFC, it was like, whoa, so trippy, man. Look what I did. But I've never had a 5-year plan like this. So I'm excited for the future. And it is going to be a bit more of a wait, but more time to do podcasts with you to keep the hype up.
That's it, man. And what is fighting to you, man? I mean, you discussed about it being a hyper reality that you really, really enjoy in some of your post-fight interviews. Why do you do it, and you know, what do you get out of it?
Sometimes I don't even know. Like it's an old Alan Watts quote is like, do you do the thing or does the thing do you? And I feel like we're fighting, the thing does me. Like when I fight, it's fighting does Shane Young. Shane Young doesn't do fighting, because the Shane Young that I knew now for half my life, so for 14 years, I didn't do martial arts. And I was that kid that I told you about that ran away. I got my bike. I got jumped for my bike. Didn't even get jumped. I never got jumped for things because I'd just be like, just take it. You know, I wouldn't fight back because I learned that fighting back makes you get hurt. So I just, you know, cower away from things. And now in my 28th year of living on this earth, I have spent 14 years training and fighting, and now I'm finally can see that this is who I am. I'm not that scared little kid that wouldn't fight for fear of being physically hurt, or, you know, like fear of being embarrassed and crying in front of my mama again. Like now I'd be happy to cry in front of my mum in front of 20,000 people like I did in Melbourne. You know, I had tears in my eyes when I was saying that speech and telling everyone to stand the fuck up, and got told off by Dana afterwards. You know, I'm proud of that person now, and I'm proud of who I am now. And for me, fighting has been like a cocoon. It's been a cocoon that I've been in, and now I'm a butterfly, just stretching my wings out in the sun, just in the sun, warming up my wings, ready to fly. Yeah, didn't answer your question, but I like the Alan Watts quote. Do you do the thing, or does the thing do you? And I feel like the thing does me. Fighting does Shane Young.
Man, and just sitting here, I think like you've got a lot of positive messages to spread. You talk about using the UFC platform. I think you should be using the internet platform a little bit more, man, because, you know, your sort of character is the type of character people want to listen to. And I think you could be pretty famous. I think you should have a look into that a little bit more, man, because, you know, there's not much of you online now. It's here and there. you know, you could do something yourself, you know, follow on the lines of some of the other fighters and be pretty popular, man. That could be another avenue for you to spread your word, you know, spread those positive vibes for New Zealand.
Thank you, bro. I really appreciate hearing that from you as someone that's in that space. And yeah, I really appreciate that, bro. Thank you. Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know, but I really appreciate you saying that. And yeah, thank you.
All right, bro. Anyway, try and do it, man. At a minimum, get onto other people's podcasts, get the word out there, but do it yourself, and that can be a revenue stream, etc. in the end for you as well as being something positive, bro. So then you got two things at once that can be related to fighting as well, you know?
Yeah, bro, 100%. Yep, I think living my more authentic life outside the cage will allow what is it? It's like self-sabotage, victiming, being the victim inside yourself. Like that's probably what's held me back to not do that stuff. Because I'll tell myself, oh, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, no one wants to hear what you got to say, kid. Like, just shut up and fight. Like, which is, some parts true. Like, we are fighters and we should just do that so I can get to that platform and have a more meaningful message. But the other side of it is exactly what you said, that by me just being myself on more platforms for other kids to see, it's only going to help benefit the world. No, it will. I know it will. I'll make sure it does.
Cool. All right, bro. Well, we're going to see some more positive stuff from you. I'll be waiting. I'll put a little Shane Young link. If anything comes up with Shane Young, I'll watch it, bro. So, yeah, we'll wait and see a bit more from you, hopefully. All right, man. Yeah, we've already been going for an hour, so I don't want to keep you too long. I appreciate so much for your time, your thoughts, all the information that you've given us about your culture and your ideas on the world and everything. It's good, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, bro. I hope I can share this to some. Maybe I do have a YouTube channel, but it's only got like my first ever pro debut, and it's like filmed from a brick. There's like 6 pixels per frame. So I'd like to share that on this too, and share this on that. And I really appreciate your kind words, and thank you for bearing with me. It's been a good at least a year that you've been trying to get me on here. So thank you for bearing with me. And yeah, tautoko, your message as well, your platform. That support means tautoko. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, man. And thanks again. And I hope I can catch you again in the future, maybe after a year or so of harassing you some more. And
yeah, I promise not to be too big.
Yeah, don't be too big, yeah, bro. Right.
Yeah,
let's do it again, the little guys, a little podcast.
Yeah, it'd be cool to next time to learn a bit more about yourself and your kid. Well, maybe not your kids, you don't want to think them, but know what's going on over there across the ditch and get to understand that culture more.
Bro, across the ditch, I've been fucking in China for 15 years already. I've forgotten about the ditch.
Are you in China right now?
Yeah, bro, I live in China.
Whoa, see, man. Oh, mate. Oh, man. Oh, cool. Yeah, okay. More to uncover on our next podcast about Toby Ryan.
We can talk about China, but it's a pretty interesting topic, actually. Anyway, bro.
Yeah.
All right, thanks again for your time, and hopefully talk again at some time in the future.
Sure, brother. One love. Cheers, bro.